Even if we could pack every single thing you could possibly need into one single package, sometimes that still isn't enough to fully replace the unique charm of the original. The main talking point that actually brought about this whole topic, can an iPad replace a Mac, has to be iOS 26. But prior to that, other YouTubers have actually tried to answer the question, can your iPad replace the Mac? But that's not what we're going to do here today. Today, we're not going to try to answer the question because I think there is no conclusive answer. What I'm going to do is try to tell you why the iPad could possibly be an alternative to the Mac and what you should consider next time you're faced with the question of should I get an iPad or a Mac. First things first, iOS 26. Biggest redesign to ever come to the iPad, and we've always felt like the iPad was always missing that something that made it a competitor to the Mac. But it seems like Apple finally said, you know what, let's give them everything. Let's see the public reaction. Will people spend more money on an iPad than a Mac? And yeah, so they gave us preview, multitasking, the traffic light button, and a cursor. A cursor, I mean, that's everything you could possibly ask from a Mac. Even after using iOS 26 for a while, there's still that little element that still makes it feel like it's not there yet, but it's still in its beta and everything will be available to the public, so get subscribed to stay up to date on that. I've used iOS 26 for 2 months and my general conclusion is I like it. But why? Multitasking is way better, so having to open about 8 different windows at the same time, and each one of these windows have a tile that can shrink into any size, and I probably think they solved the problem of picture in picture, because even if that's a feature on some streaming platforms, you don't have it with YouTube. So now I can just open an Excel sheet or doc and also have YouTube playing on the other side while I do my work. It used to work well with Stage Manager before, but Stage Manager wasn't there. But I think I would give a thumbs up to the multitasking that's happening in iPadOS 26. Personally, I use my iPad as a second screen, so I don't have a magic keyboard. I can just easily pair my trackpad and my keyboard from my Mac to my iPad because, yeah, Apple's continuity feature is one of the best things in the world. And so that makes multitasking even better, but even more interesting, you can now use the cursor and the toolbar. But you could also just swipe down from the top to access the toolbar. But for the most part, the only thing you'll be clicking there is the traffic light button. We'll just call it the traffic light button because it's red, yellow, green. I mean, makes sense. Even after all these features, you can probably spell out that the iPad could possibly be an alternative for the Mac, but I still find myself constantly going back to the Mac. And I think that's just because my iPad has always been used for what it has been used for. A media note-taking device. Which brings us to, why did you get an iPad in the first place? Or for those of you that don't have an iPad or considering getting one, are you getting it for school, for note-taking, for meetings, or you just want to stream something on a bigger screen that's not a TV? Or you got it as a daily driver for your workflow? There are people who use an iPad as a daily driver, and personally I haven't really met one, because every single person I know that has an iPad has a laptop. And so it's safe to say that, yeah, every single person that I know uses it as a media note-taking device. Because if you have a heavy workflow, say maybe you do a lot of editing and you have some sort of software that requires a bunch of power, then you can argue that getting a MacBook Air would be better than getting an iPad. But that now comes down to convenience, because you could easily just sit comfortably with a MacBook on your lap than an iPad. But here's the theory: even though Apple gives us all these features and lets you pair your iPad with a keyboard and a pencil, don't you think a $1 trillion company runs the risk of running into loss if they have more sales on an iPad than the keyboard? Loss on the Mac, of course. Something to think about. I think there's a whole lot of psychological thing that we don't talk about. And so that being said, I still love my iPad so very much, but there's still just that thing that makes me go back to the Mac. And I would still say that there's just that little element that makes a Mac and an iPad an iPad. But let me leave you with this comment. If you had $2,500 to spend, and I say $2,500 because that's the amount you have to spend if you want to get an iPad with a magic keyboard to pair it up to make a computer. If you had $2,500 to spend, would you rather get an iPad or a Mac? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Oh, I know I said we're not going to be doing Apple content anymore, but yeah, look at us now. Clowns. Myself. But yeah. Get subscribed. Apple events on September 9th. So yeah. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace. As we to excel.